He laughed the second he saw my name on the cap table, like a glitch in the matrix. Said something like, "Aw, look, HR accidentally gave the intern a share." I wasn't the intern. I was the one who rebuilt the entire backend after his visionary architecture couldn't survive a spike from a Reddit AMA. The servers crashed mid-demo. I fixed it while he blamed DevOps onstage and told investors it was just a load balancer thing. I stayed quiet. That was my thing. Quiet, efficient, forgettable, just the way I needed to be. But that Slack message, that coding monkeys don't need stock options line, that hit different. Not because it was public, not because I was tagged, but because by then I had already begun. See, what he didn't know was that 6 months earlier, I started running a script. Not in production, don't worry, in a sandbox. Scraping metadata, tracing commits, analyzing behavioral anomalies across our Git activity and internal messaging logs. Pattern recognition at scale. That was the real product, not the stupid AI pet tracker he was pitching. The script had one job, to map manipulation, and it worked. By the time he made that joke, I already had a private repo with 3 years of patterns, who took credit for whose code, who got promoted after launch, who got warnings filed and who didn't. It wasn't just sexism, it was a system. A measurable, traceable system, and I knew how to weaponize it. What I didn't expect, what no one expected, was what came from the dead founder's email. You know that rumor about how the original CTO died in a hiking accident and left his shares in a sealed trust? Not entirely true. Turns out the guy didn't die. He disappeared, and I found him. That part changed everything. I was living in Vermont under a different name, growing tomatoes and writing manifestos about why venture capital is a disease. I found his blog by accident, buried under a pile of dead Medium links and abandoned GitHub gists. But the writing, same syntax, same code tags, same obsession with control structures and betrayal. So I emailed him, not from my real account, obviously. I used a burner. Said I was a former engineer at his company, that I wanted to know why he left without a word, why his name vanished from every board mention, every patent. It took 3 weeks. Then one day, one line, because I wouldn't call lies innovation. Then he called me, voice cracked, said he hadn't spoken to anyone from that world in 5 years, that he still had the documents. That yes, he still technically owned 3.7%, and that his lawyer had been waiting for someone, anyone, could prove the current CTO committed option suppression fraud during the Series A. You know what that means, right? It means my tiny grant, which I exercised for less than the price of a used iPhone, suddenly had power. Not because of its size, but because of what it was tied to. Voting leverage, quiet leverage, leverage they never saw coming, so I flew out. Vermont. Mud season. Wore hiking boots and borrowed a friend's Subaru. We met at a gas station, handed me a USB drive wrapped in aluminum foil and said, "This burns everything down. Don't let it get diluted." Inside were cap table drafts, board emails, old NDAs with buried clauses. Stuff that proved what I suspected for years, that our CTO clawed his way up by erasing other people, that his mentorship was just slow-motion theft. But here's where things twist again. As I'm heading back to the car, the founder, Josh, leans in and says, "Tried to kill the company once. They'll try again. You've got maybe 2 weeks before someone notices what you're building." I didn't understand what he meant until the audit. Internal compliance flagged my credentials that Monday, said there were anomalies in my Git privileges. I got locked out of Jenkins, code reviews, even Slack. They were trying to freeze me mid-commit, but I was already ahead. Because 2 days before, I forked everything, cloned our entire repo, not to leak it, to rewrite it. And what I wrote next, what I named that repo, was the first nail in his coffin, /revenant vote in it / because ghosts come back. And I wasn't done haunting him yet. The repo wasn't just a fork. It was a rewrite with a purpose. Every commit was surgical. I stripped his name off contributions he never made, reinstated buried credit lines, rewrote the version history to show the real architects behind the original engine, people who'd been quietly pushed out or performance managed into silence. And in the README, right at the top, I wrote, "This is a mirror, not of code, but of consequence." Then I attached the old founder's documents, digitized, timestamped, redacted where necessary, but enough to rattle anyone who knew what they were looking at. The plan was never to leak it publicly. That's rookie revenge. This was tactical. Crypted the repo and uploaded it to 3 different legal escrow services, with a trigger condition. If my employment was terminated without cause, it would release to our entire investor mailing list. And yes, I included the CTO's wife, because she was listed as the shadow signatory on one of the backdated stock option authorizations. But even then, I didn't move yet. I needed one more thing. One fatal variable, control, which meant shares, which meant allies. Enter Linda from finance. Nobody paid attention to Linda. She wore orthopedic shoes and spoke in Excel formulas, but she'd been there since the pivot from health tech to pet analytics, and she hated the CTO more than I did. Said he once called her a spreadsheet with glasses. I took her out to lunch. Let her talk. She cracked by dessert. Turns out she knew about the phantom equity pool, options promised, never issued, of leads who were verbally offered grants, then gaslit when they followed up. She'd been ordered to delete drafts. One of them had a handwritten note in the margin. Coding monkeys don't negotiate, D. She showed me the scanned copy. I showed her my plan. Linda didn't hesitate. Said she'd already exercised her dust-sized grant and held 0.14%. She'd vote with me. 2 more engineers joined quietly. One of them, Miguel, been demoted after flagging a security flaw that the CTO later claimed to have fixed himself. I showed Miguel what was really happening with that flaw. Showed him the repo, the documents. His hands shook. If this is real, he said, he's not just a fraud. He's dangerous. I said nothing. I didn't need to because Miguel, he had 0.9%. And now so did I. Together, we had 3.01%. Just enough to trigger a motion. Just enough to call a vote. Just enough to make the man who mocked me finally ask, "Wait, what the hell are you doing?" I looked him dead in the eye, smiled, and said, rebooting the system. He thought it was a bluff. When I filed the motion to convene a special board meeting, he walked into my shared workspace like a sitcom dad who'd caught the kids playing CEO. Cup of cold brew in one hand, sarcastic clap with the other. Nice move, Ava. Very house of cards. What's next? Gonna leak our user data to TechCrunch. I didn't flinch. Just handed him a copy of the shareholder clause, Article 6, subsection C, the one that let minority holders convene an emergency session if they could demonstrate material risk to the company. Risk like, say, falsified option pools, backdated equity approvals, insider allocation to spouses during blackout periods. He went pale when he saw the exhibit tabs. "You've been busy," he said. "Coding monkeys type fast," I replied. That's when the mood shifted. The next day, HR sent me a wellness check email. Said they noticed my recent behavior had been uncharacteristically erratic and offered to connect me with a counselor. Classic playbook. Undermine credibility. If that didn't work, prep for smear campaign. But here's where his arrogance turned into an asset. Because he never bothered to check who owned what. He was out doing TED talks and panel discussions on founder resilience. The old founder's silent shares remained in limbo. And guess what? Josh had just legally reassigned them. To me. 3.7% added to my existing 0.9%. I now controlled 4.6% of the company, individually, and when you factored in Linda's portion and Miguel's, we were over 7%. Enough to shake the board, enough to make the investor rep, Todd, the slick one from Chicago who always called me Amy by mistake, finally respond to my emails with "Let's talk." So we did, over Zoom, no camera. I showed him the sealed USB evidence, shared screen. Watched his jaw clench as he read through internal memos, fraud audits, and most damning, a private Slack message the CTO sent to an advisor. "If she ever tries anything, I'll bury her with NDAs and legal bills." No one listens to code jockeys. Todd leaned back, said nothing for a full minute. Then, "You're not bluffing, nope. What do you want?" "I want the vote to go through. No interference, no sabotage." And after, I stared at the screen. "I want him to sell." "You mean resign?" "No," I said, "I mean panic sell." Because this wasn't just a reckoning. It was a hostile extraction, and I wasn't in it for a moral win. I was in it to burn his empire for warmth. The boardroom didn't have windows, just that sterile, silicon-polished glow of recessed lighting and unspoken power. 7 chairs. 5 filled, 2 empty, his and mine. He walked in late, of course, still wearing that smug Patagonia vest like a suit of armor, Starbucks in hand, eyes skimming everyone like we were NPCs in his origin story. "Ava," he nodded. "You're making quite the splash." I didn't smile, didn't blink. I slid the shareholder petition across the table with the notarized vote threshold attached. Every signature already there. I'd even included a timestamped doc trail showing how his wife's trust had received those ghost equity packages, illegally. His eyes flicked over it. Then he chuckled. "This is cute. Really, you brought receipts." "No," I said, locking eyes with the investor rep across the table. "I brought leverage." He scanned the room again, looking for allies. Miguel stared back like he'd already attended the man's funeral. Linda was reading a spreadsheet as if she'd already moved on to Q3 planning. Todd cleared his throat. "We've reviewed the documentation," he said. "We recommend a pause in executive authority until a full audit is completed." The CTO scoffed. A pause. Based on what? A GitHub repo and a disgruntled middle dev with a flair for drama. Not drama, I said, pulling out a file folder. Data. Pattern mapped privilege abuse across 4 product cycles. You rebranded theft as mentorship. I wrote the algorithm that proves it. That's when the twitch started, right corner of his mouth. Micro expressions, panic under the skin. He flipped into attack mode. You think you're clever? You think a couple of dusty contracts and a half-dead founder give you my company? I built this. I leaned forward. No, you assembled it, like a thief in IKEA. And now it's falling apart, because you never read the instructions. Then came the silence. The kind that freezes time. Todd finally said, we've initiated a freeze on discretionary spending. All grant disbursements are suspended, and pending the outcome of this audit, you are advised to refrain from representing the company in external communications. Translation, you're radioactive now. But he still had one move left, and he played it dirty. That night, someone broke into my parked car. Nothing taken. But the USB I kept in the glove box, one of 3 copies of the original founder's materials, was gone. Which meant someone was scared. Good, because I hadn't backed up just one version. I had 7, in 7 locations, including the one inside his office plant. Hidden in plain sight, behind the fake succulent he never watered. And tomorrow morning, that USB was scheduled for delivery. Straight to his biggest investor. The cover letter that simply read, Coding Monkeys Remember. He called me at 3:12 a.m. Blocked number. I answered because I wanted to hear the sound of him unraveling. Ava, he said, voice cracked like static under pressure. We don't have to go nuclear. You already did, I said flatly, sitting on the floor of my apartment in gym shorts, watching the file transfer screen blink 98% complete. I'm just delivering the fallout. He tried the old voice. I'm patronizing, faux concern. This vendetta, it's emotional, I get it, but you're making a career-ending mistake. No, I said, you made it for me 3 years ago, when you took my product notes, slapped your name on them, and pitched to Andreessen without me in the room. Silence. Then he tried a pivot. You're not thinking long-term. You want your name on something? Fine. Let's restructure. We can walk into Series D together. I'll make you Chief Product Officer. You'll equity. Not the crumbs, I cut in. Not the coding monkey leftovers. His breath hitched. Just for a second, you're going to destroy this company. I stood up, walked to the window. Watched the sunrise touch the tip of the Salesforce tower like the slow grin of revenge. No, I said, I'm going to exercise it. Click. Call ended. By 9 a.m., the investor packet had landed. 7 PDFs, each cross-linked, digitally signed, time-stamped, cataloged in a spreadsheet named Exhibit Eulogy. The response came in fast. Todd called first. You're not bluffing. They've started panic trading. Then Linda, NASDAQ filings updated. They're prepping to reassign board seats. Then Miguel, stunned. He just sold half his shares in under 6 hours. But the best part, the CTO didn't show up to the office. Not that day, not the next. His assistant tried to reach him. HR said he was on a wellness retreat. I knew the truth. Because a mutual I once mentored in cybersecurity pinged me a screenshot. Private Discord group. One of his burner aliases. Message posted an hour earlier. Anyone know how to create a Cayman shadow entity that doesn't trace back to Stripe invoices? He was fleeing, liquidating, begging for offshore anonymity. And every time he cashed out, his panic sale diluted his control. Every single share. By Friday, he was the largest non-founder stakeholder in the company. And on Monday, I walked into his old office, swiveled in the chair he used to mock people from, looked at the ceramic mug that said 10x engineer and dropped it in the trash. Then I opened a draft email. Subject, reorg proposal, Operation Monkey King, because the cage was open, and I wasn't the one swinging anymore. He tried one last Hail Mary before the final board vote. A mass email. He CC'd to every investor, advisor, and press contact he had left. Subject line, protecting innovation from internal sabotage. In it, he painted himself as the misunderstood genius. Claimed he was the victim of a coordinated smear campaign by a junior developer with delusions of grandeur. Attached half screenshots. Cropped Slack messages. Even looped in a fake whistleblower, an ex-contractor he'd underpaid and ghosted after launch. He underestimated 2 things. 1, I had receipts for everything. 2, I wasn't alone anymore. Within 30 minutes, Miguel fired back with a reply all. A full, time-stamped GitHub audit log proving the CTO hadn't committed a single deploy in over a year. Then, Linda chimed in with archived budget proposals, showing misallocated funds rerouted to strategic partnerships, which just so happened to all share a routing number with his wife's PR agency. Then came 6 engineers, 3 designers, 2 former PMs, and one previously silent co-founder who'd been bought out in year 1, all replying, all attaching receipts. It was a digital dogpile. And by the time I sent my reply, it wasn't a rebuttal. It was a eulogy. I'm not here to debate with a man who called me a monkey while stealing my blueprints. Here to ensure no one like him gets to wear visionary as camouflage ever again. That night, the vote went through. Unanimous. He was stripped of title, decision authority, and board privileges. A lawyer from the firm that once courted him for a SPAC acquisition arrived the next morning to collect his badge, laptop, and last shred of relevance. Word got out fast. TechCrunch ran it with the headline: CTO resigns amidst allegations of fraud and toxic leadership. Engineer-turned-activist steps in. But I wasn't celebrating yet, because buried inside one of the spreadsheets we uncovered, one no one had read closely until now, was a line item. Emergency fund allocation. Cayman entity transfer, $4.2 million, meaning he had already moved part of the war chest offshore. And that wasn't just cowardice. That was prep. For something. And as I stared at the file, words scrawled in the notes column next to the transfer caught my eye: Phase 2. Which meant this wasn't over. Not yet. Phase 2 wasn't a plan, it was a threat. The next week was a blur of headlines, legal meetings, and hard drives. We thought we'd won, but he'd left behind rot in the foundation. On Tuesday, the site went down. Not just a crash, sabotage. Every third-party service revoked tokens. Deployment keys had been quietly duplicated and embedded with time-triggered backdoors. DevOps panicked. Slack exploded. And in the middle of it all, a burner Git commit surfaced, pushed from an IP in Lisbon. Message: coding monkeys should have stayed in their cage. The board called an emergency crisis session. Press was sniffing blood. He was trying to tank the company on his way out, hoping it'd crash hard enough to kill the stock price before clawbacks kicked in. What he didn't know, I anticipated it. The night I got control, I spun up a sandbox clone of our entire code base, rewritten from the clean commits I'd been compiling for months. Secure, versioned, immutable. I called it Simian Dawn. No bloat, no legacy code, no backdoors. And when production flatlined, we didn't rebuild, we switched. In 6 hours, we rolled over to the new platform. All services up. Zero downtime to users. While the world thought we were bleeding out, we were already reborn. By midnight, the press had changed tone. Engineer who ousted CTO saves company from collapse with secret rebuild. I didn't comment. I didn't tweet. I didn't need to, because the next morning he called again. Blocked number. Same cracked voice. Ava, he said, you don't understand the game. You can't win, not without getting dirty. I just stared at the horizon from the office window. His old office, my new one. I didn't get dirty, I said. You were the dirt. I just washed you off. You think they'll remember you for this? He hissed. They'll forget you the moment something shinier comes along. I smiled. Good. Then I can build in peace. Click. Final disconnect. He fled Europe, maybe Dubai. He won't resurface for a while. Not until he finds a new group of people to charm and destroy. But here, we rebuilt. Miguel is CTO now and is running operations. The Simian Dawn platform went open source last month and hit 80K stars on GitHub in 3 weeks. And me? I don't go to mixers anymore. I don't need the sushi or the panels or the pitches. I just watch him fade. Watch the legend of the visionary founder rot like bad code in a legacy branch no one dares to merge again. Because now, when someone mocks coding monkeys, there's a different joke they remember. The one where a girl got tired of the cage and rewrote the whole damn zoo.